Om yo brahmanam vidadati purvam yo vai vedamscha prahinohi tasmai tam ha deva atma buddhi prakasha mumukshurvai sharanagata ham prapadye. Om Shantihi, Shantihi, Shantihi. That one Supreme Being who projected Lord Brahma at the beginning of a cosmic cycle, who is the eternal bridge to immortality, who delivered the Vedas unto him, who is partless, faultless, actionless, and indivisible, who resembles fire that has consumed all its fuel. I go for refuge to that one Brahman, whose light turns our understanding towards the Atman, the indivisible self of mankind. Om peace, peace, peace. Om Sahana, Om Sahana Vavatu, Sahano Bhunaktu, Sahaviryam Karvavahai, Tejasvi Navaditamastu Mavidishalai. Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. May Brahman, the reality, protect us. May Brahman sustain us. May Brahman illumine our thinking process. May we not find fault with each other, with the teachings, or with the world. And may what we study be a source of inspiration to us eternally. Om peace, peace, peace. May peace be unto us, and may peace be unto all. Om Hari Om. We have all gathered here at SRV Oregon to enter into a new Upanishad. That is, when last I was here, we completed the Adhyatma Upanishad, if you remember, with all its beautiful teachings. We discovered a new gem in that one because of these 108 Upanishads. Probably only 10 of them were prominent, commented on by Shankara when he was alive in 700 AD area. And the others were not commented on by such a great contemporary mind. So they're affectionately known as minor Upanishads. And we have been looking into them and find out that where that's an affectionate title, it's certainly not a fitting title for their merit and their scope, because this Upanishads we studied last time, and as you'll see by the one we're going to study starting this visit, have profound teachings in them and beautiful settings, as the Upanishads are known for. They're an interesting non-dual scripture in that they teach from metaphors and stories and settings that have to do with relativity, the gods, the human beings, situations of life, and the desire to be free, the escape from suffering. All of these are themes that, of course, have to be taken up in the realm of name and form, in time and space, or i.e. Maya. So that chant we just concluded, Om Sahana Vavatu, is actually the chant that starts this Upanishad. So we've already welcomed in the rishi, Samkriti his name was, and the teacher that he went to called Surya Narayan. Surya Narayan is the sun. So Samkriti, wanting to know more about the Brahmavidya, or the ultimate knowledge, has gone inside to seek the source of all light, which is the sun god. He's the source of all external suns. And we know there are billions of those in our physical universe alone. So he's going to the source of all of these great suns, which are like great internal thoughts. And he's propitiating the sun god with the science of the wise, is how we find that listed in this Upanishad. And with the science of the wise, he starts off this Upanishad, and therefore Surya Narayan becomes pleased with him and starts giving him or delivering to him this Brahmavidya, this highest wisdom. That's it contained long before suns were even born, long before the mind thought about them, and anterior to life and mind, as the Mundaka Upanishad tells us, before any of this started, before any name and form appeared, before any worlds came out of the mental process. So that eternal wisdom which infills and underlies everything. And if you have the eye to see it, sometimes they call that the Jnana Chakshu, or wisdom eye, or it was called the third eye. If thine eye be single eye, that we know about even from Jesus' teachings. If you have that eye open or opening, then you're able to see that all-pervasive presence, or at least intuit it behind everything. It's like John said, no one has seen God with these eyes. So it's not like this wisdom is something that you can actually see with the physical eye, but it's something that is reflected through everything. So if the physical eyes become pure and they're attuned to the subtle eyes inside of you, like in your dream state and in your meditation, the third eye, then you have inwardly ascending gradation of ability to see, not just intuit this wisdom, but see that all of this is the effect of it. If you don't have that, then you see all of this as Maya. Or you see only nature, the outer nature, not the inner nature where outer nature came from. You'll never see the seeds to nature if you're looking for them in the physical universe. They come from a mental universe or an intellectual or a wisdom universe. So if that ability is there in you to see, then you intuit it everywhere and in everything. And if not, then all you see is what you want to see on the outside. The names and forms, taking them to be real, and the suffering and pleasure that comes with them, also real. And maybe the only meaning or purpose for existence becomes those things. So they call that, of course, the sleep of ignorance, or mula vidya, root ignorance, that people fall into so willingly, and they don't struggle. As Sri Ramakrishna used to say, if you grab the beak of a male pigeon, it struggles and try and get free. See, other birds may just sit there really quiet, and just give up to their fate. Or he said, some bulls, if you go looking for a bull to plow your fields, if you touch their rear end with a stick, you see, they'll just sit there and look at you like, what are you doing back there? You see. And other bull, you come up and touch it, and it frisks about, and it turns its horns on you. That's the bull to plow my field, he says. So you have to have this ability to struggle. So struggling is a sign that you want to see that undying eternal presence that's in everything, and which is so well reflected by the sun god, Surya Narayan. So, Om Namo Surya Narayan. Everyone can say that now. Om Namo Surya Narayan. So we invoke him as we start into the Upanishad, and since it's not printed anywhere really in books and so forth, we had to take it from other sources, and I'll pass these out to those people present here, see if we have enough to go around. And so we're kind of entering into a beautiful experiment in this way, because many people in the world, even in India, don't know about this Upanishad very well. But in the West, of course, we don't even know the word Upanishad sometimes. So everyone got one? You want here? Pass the extras back so we'll have plenty for people who come tomorrow. We're missing a few of our contingent here today because at least 3 people are out of town having to attend conferences or emergencies with family, which is often the way with Maya, when you try and focus on Brahman inside of Maya, seems like all the obstacles will come up about then. If you're just going about your own business, then sometimes Maya just fades to the back and doesn't get in your way, unless you go on with a life of insouciance and pleasure and non-depth. You stay on the surface of things. But as Kabir says in his beautiful poem, dive deep, O mind, dive deep into the ocean of God's beauty. If you descend to the uttermost depths, there you will find the gem of love. And light up, O mind, light up wisdom's shining lamp. And with it, with its light, you will find your way to that ultimate truth, which Samkriti here is looking for when he goes to the sun god, Surya Narayan. Light up with wisdom's shining lamp. See? So that mind has to be willing to do that and enter into that kind of a state, a higher state, which we were just hearing read about before the live stream audience joined us when we were reading the Gospel of Sri Ramakrishna prior to the class opening here. So welcome then to this new Upanishad, the Akshi Upanishad, which we will take apart sloka by sloka. You can see that it has some 40-some slokas in it, and so it's not as long as the Adhyatma Upanishad that we studied over the last year, but that's okay because many of these slokas are profound and take some unwrapping. And so I've created 2 new charts, or at least 1 new chart about the sun god, which I'll show you, but let's introduce it first and take it as the text itself proposes, and then we will take the chart which revisits all these beautiful salutations that are going on. So remember, Samkriti has gone inside, he's meditating within on inner worlds, and he's a rishi of profound attainments, so he can penetrate through the outer worlds, Maya, which are the outer senses, just like all of us do in sleep tonight. We drop our outer senses and we take on inner senses. Well, he can do this consciously, and then he can also go beyond the dream senses into a deep sleep kind of state where things begin to become formless, and he does all of this threefold process consciously. Now this Upanishad is interesting or distinct in that we find not just the 8 limbs of yoga as it are found in the Patanjali Yoga, but we find 8 stages of yoga listed. So I'll eventually have a chart for you on the 8 stages of yoga. That has to do less with limbs of attainment you have to do and more with your personal development, or what stage of yoga you can reach. For instance, after the opening slokas, Surya Narayan tells Samkriti, the rishi, that those beings who reach this state of inquiry and non-attachment, just prior to that, they have reached the first stage of yoga. That is, they're called, all other beings who are trying to reach these higher stages are called Arya, which means noble, basically. You're a noble practitioner. But those beings who actually reach the first stage of yoga are called liberated. From what? From the transmigratory process. You have to understand that in Vedanta and in Buddhism and yoga, when you destroy ignorance and you accept divine reality, that you've reached a stage where you're about ready to transcend the transmigratory process. Now, for people who think that life is all and everything, this isn't going to make sense. They don't want to leave life, even when it's bad, or maybe they can't find out how to leave life. They don't have the ideation that there is an ability in you or in beings to transcend the cycle of rebirth and death, to actually realize your birthless, deathless soul. It's what we talk about all the time in spiritual circles. And then so we began to develop, as practitioners, an ideology around it. Oh, maybe that exists. It's sort of like, say, maybe in other religions, in Christianity and Hinduism, starting to see that there's an ancestor realm where your loved ones have gone, and maybe you want to go join them, you see. So it is leaving this world and going to another world, life after death, if you want to call it that. But of course, when you take that trans-religion and you go into the level of philosophy and spirituality, then you're beginning to transcend heaven. And because heaven is the seed state for earth. You see, just like the dream state is the seed state for the waking state. So when you pass from your body and you drop your body, which is obvious to intelligent people, not the self, not the Atman, not Buddha nature, not the ego, then you have a transmigrating soul that will go to another location, and this location is in your mind, basically. It's not out in space, we know that now. We should know that if we're not just superstitious. And certainly not in the body somewhere, which is just full of the 7 elements and so forth, 5 elements and the 7 dhatus, they call them. So we know that inside must mean inside of a mentation process, inside of our mind, because the mind is the host to consciousness, the body is just the host to prana, energy, you see. So the mind is the host of consciousness. That's why science can't find consciousness in anything and won't look for consciousness in anything. It won't admit that intelligence comes first and everything else comes later, because Maya is making it look like intelligence comes after the fetus, after the birth, after development, after growth, and maybe never comes to some fools ever. So those who get intelligence, they're even getting it after the fact, right? The fact meaning your birth. So Maya is making it look like everything comes, like intelligence and consciousness come later, if you even admit to them. So if you can't find consciousness in the quotient, then these great teachings are of course going to be new to you, and you're going to have to entertain them and meditate upon them. So back to the idea of the first stage of yoga, you're wanting to transcend the transmigratory process. Your soul is transmigrating from location to location. The body dies and is born in physical, over and over again. It all seems physical if your body attached. But if you live more in your mind than in your physical state, then you're having dreams, you're having visions, you're having insights, you're having meditations, you're having transcendent states like deep sleep or a very high meditation. These are all the concomitants of intelligence. So you've shifted to another level of your consciousness. I don't want to kick a dead horse about that. Some of you, of course, long ago figured this out, but in live streaming and all, and for future people who will watch these classes, then we have to make sure that they understand the premise that we're all coming from when we call ourselves spiritual or beyond religion, which is a good start. Good to be born in a church, but don't die in a church, Swami Vivekananda said. So what is that beyond religion? The open space beyond religion, as our founder here, Lex Hickson, called it. The open space beyond religion is this opening into states that are ultimately formless, but on the way have gradation in your own consciousness. Your mind holds all these levels. So your mind holds heaven, and it holds higher heaven, and it holds the gods and the goddesses, and it holds the ancestors. It's all part of the common mind. We call it collective mind. You're all thinking in the same way, see. And so you create a world around it and gather. You're gregarious. And the less gregarious ones are saying, I don't think I want to stay in those worlds. They want to transcend the transmigratory process. And they don't want to be in that loop anymore with the ancestors, taking on bodies again and again against their will, without knowing, like a helpless baby. Everyone's agog about it. But an enlightened soul would look at it and go, never again, see? Never again. I'll never end up like that again. Because he's realized the bliss of freedom beyond all forms, and there's nothing that compares to that. You just read the Gospel of Ramakrishna and you'll find a man who is constantly in that state, and maybe you'll want to emulate him. Take him as your Ishtam and your ideal, and take him that way for your entire life and not give him up. until you reach a state equal to his. I and my Father are one, it's called, or tat tomasi, that thou art. So transcending the transmigratory process is an issue for people who are engaged in sadhana, that is spiritual practice. Why are they doing spiritual practice? To become enlightened? Good luck with that. Most people never even know when they get enlightened, if they're enlightened. So there might be another goal you can aim at that's not quite so elevated and out of your mind, that is transcendent of your mind. And that could be called getting off the wheel of birth and death, Lord Buddha called it. There's words for it: samsara, maya. Since there have been words for it since back before the scriptures were even written down by the ancient seers, then we should probably know that they stumbled upon such things, or through the grace of their own willpower, or the Divine Mother of the Universe penetrated through obstacles and saw it, which some of these beautiful chants that we'll look at attached to this, associated to the sun god will tell us. So before we take up the chart and look at this beautiful opening, let me read it to you. You can just, if you don't even have to look at the paper if you don't want, you can just imagine this great effulgent, self-effulgent being. Self-effulgent means the sun, even the suns out there don't borrow their light from anywhere. They have their own light. It's just as if the sun god is saying, this is you. You see, all of you 7 or 8 billion people on earth, there are 7 or 8 billion suns in the sky that are just your outer reflection. They're self-effulgent, so are you. So quit depending upon others and other things and other circumstances, and find the one single guru inside of your own self, as Sri Ramakrishna used to say. And don't stop until you know you've found it. And don't pretend it. Don't stop halfway. You'll know when it occurs to you, and because it is self-effulgent, and you'll shine with your own light. So that word in Sanskrit, svayam jyoti. Jyoti means light. Svayam jyoti, it's self-effulgent. The moon isn't like that. The moon shines by borrowed light, so there are plenty of souls that are shining by a borrowed light. That borrowed light to me would be prana, wouldn't be Brahman. Because if you saw the light of Brahman, you'd be like a moth to a bonfire. There's no way you could even resist going there, and but to speak of merging in it and transcending form. So there are plenty of souls who act more like prana is their god. Prana means food. Prana means breathing. Prana means doing physical exercises. Prana means focusing on health of the body only, and forgetting your mental health and your intellectual health, and particularly your spiritual health. So they're moons. And then there are those beings that Surya Narayan is telling Samkriti are noble, Arya. They actually have made the distinction between the real and the unreal, but they haven't gone on to detach from the unreal yet. That's a good way of putting it, Sanskrit, Vedanta-wise. Viveka and Vairagya, the 2 V's, which mean the 2 D's, discrimination and detachment, are a process for most people. To separate the wheat from the chaff is how we would understand that in Christendom if we were born in that religion. So to do that, then you're going to have to realize that there's a distinction between the real and the unreal. The essential and the non-essential, if you'd rather, or the eternal and the non-eternal is even sometimes a better, nitya and anicca. So if you realize there's a distinction between those two, then you're noble, and you're kind of launched on your path. But you're not really through the door yet and safe from Maya or from regression, and until you actually see the difference between the real and the unreal, and take the unreal and deny it, reject it, dissolve it. Whatever you have to do with it, go do that. And then end up with like a self-effulgent sun, shining in your own light, no matter what anyone says or anyone does or what happens. is what Krishna says in the Gita. You should be the same in praise and blame. You should be the praise and honor and dishonor. You should be the same no matter what happens. Be content with anything that happens and just stay in your one equal, equanimous self, all-pervasive self. Like the sun does. Does it move? We used to think it did. Now we find everything's moving around it. And it's in one stationary place with its own light. So, salutations to the sun god, even that one up there, which is just a mere reflection of the real sun inside of us, who is immovable and stationary, who shines with its own light, and who does so many other things. I'll just give you a quick peek. See, look. Oh, too bad you missed it. So many other things in the sun god that we will look at. Let's read it first. You can meditate on this opening. Om. Good way to start. May he protect us both together. May he nourish us both together. May we work conjointly with great energy. May our study be vigorous and effective. May we not mutually dispute. May we not hate any or each other. Om, let there be peace in me. Let there be peace in my environment. Let there be peace in the forces that act within me. That's Sahana Bhavatu, another English translation for it. All right, so here's the beginning of the first kanda, or section, of the Akshi Upanishad. Akshi means really the eye, or to see. You're actually, it's the power that makes the eye see, Akshi Upanishad. So this is the Upanishad that will open the eye, as it were. So this is the Chakshushmati Vidya. Chakshu means eye, or to see. Chakshur means to see. So this is that section of knowledge. And part one goes, then the blessed Samkriti, who is that rishi, repaired to the solar world. Nice way of putting it. Bowing down to the sun, he glorified the sun by means of the science of the wise. He said, Om, salutation to the blessed Lord, the glorious sun, to the power of the eye. Om, salutation to the sky wanderer. Om, salutation to the commander of the armies of light. Om, salutation to the excess of light, called darkness. Om, salutation to energy, prana. Om, salutations to light, salutations to light, salutations to light. And then from the Brihadaranyaka Upanishad, Om asato ma sadgamoya, tamaso ma joytirgamoya, mrityorma amritam gamaya, albir mayedi, rudra yate dakshina mukam, tenama pahi nityam, Om shanti 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 hi. Lead me from the unreal to the real, from darkness to light, from death to immortality. We find that is also in the Akshi Upanishad, that famous quote, as well as in the Brihadaranyaka Upanishad. Onward, salutations to the essence of purity, the Blessed One, who scorches the sins of the sinful, the blessed swan, hamsa, of the essence of purity, who is the prototype of the bound soul, or the jiva. There rises the sun, thousand-rayed, existent in myriad ways, the life of all animate beings. I meditate on him who is omniform, compassionate, omniscient, ambrosial, of the essence of light, the scorcher. Om, salutation to the blessed Lord, the Sun, the offspring of the infinite, the power of the eye, the flood of days, the flood, all hail, all hail. And that was Samkriti's propitiation of the sun god. Probably made him feel real good. So the sun says, the narrator says, thus glorified by means of the science of the wise, the Lord in the form of the sun was highly gratified. He said, whichever Brahmana studies without break this science of the wise never contacts any eye disease. Never contracts any eye disease. None is born blind in his family. Teaching this to the 8 Brahmanas, one becomes perfect in this science. Whoever knows this is magnified many times over. So That is the first section of the Upanishad. The second section is now all the slokas, which you will get to. But let's go back and look at some of those beautiful entries in accordance with this new chart. Now here's the representation of the sun god, and I've just called this chart All Hail Surya Narayan, salutations to the Lord of all suns, the God of all light, and so forth. We've seen already now beautifully saluted by the rishi and by all the rishis. So you can see there, the Akshi Upanishad later says, quote, "There rises the thousand-armed, existent in myriad ways, the life of all animate beings. Meditate upon that one who is omniform, all-compassionate, omniscient, ambrosial, and the essence of light, the scorcher. Salutations to the blessed offspring of the infinite, the power of all eyes to see, the flood of endless days, the flood, all hail, all hail." So I used that out of the Akshi Upanishad for the opening quote here. And on the designation of the sun god here, you can see his staff here coming out. Staff of the flood of endless days. So who is it that gives us our life? And countless days go by in our life and in our lifetimes, and we never think about them. They're just one after the other happen to us and occur to us and granted to us by the Surya Narayan. Without the sun, we wouldn't exist, of course, energy-wise, but then if we did exist and we had eyes, we wouldn't be able to see. So you look into the depth of the power of the sun, you can see why many cultures in the world have worshipped it. Whether they called it Ra or Surya or any other name, they've realized the profundity of even the physical existence of the one sun in the sky. Probably better that they saw it as one sun in the sky, because now that we know there are billions of suns in the sky, then now we're tending to overlook it. It's like, oh, ho-hum, there's just a sun shining up there. And we would have been better off with just one sun and just worshiping it and praying to it. But to pray to it is not to pray to a physical object. That's the beauty of the advancement of a solar line. You see, this is Samkriti repaired to the solar world. So it means he left this world and went to the origin of all light. He wanted to trace, which Vedanta is so good about, trace origins to their source, and then find out eventually, as India did, that there is no origin to anything. We were just talking at satsang last night about that too, is how there's that Christ knew about the eternal existence of the Almighty Father, and he didn't mean to suggest that when he said in the beginning was the Word was with God, and the Word was God, that meant there was a real beginning to anything. That's the problem that science has come upon and haven't been able to solve. And so they're proposing a Big Bang and then some sort of a end of a universe later, some sort of dissolution. But since it stretches so far into endless time backwards, and it's going to stretch so far into infinite time forwards, then why not meditate upon the offspring of the infinite? See, that's how it's put here. He's the offspring of the infinite. So the infinite being has given, like infinite space, has given a foundation for a billion suns. That's just on the physical plane alone. But if you were to go to the solar, repair to the solar world, you would find that all these suns are like great thoughts or great beings shining in their own light, self-effulgent. And that thou art too. See, you have that same Atman, what is the only light. And you shine with that light. And as it works its way down and out the spectrum, it becomes more physical. Till finally, I'm different from the sun, and I'm different from my brother and sister, and so forth. And you forget that one homogeneous light that connects us all together, like gold and gold ornaments. There may be different ornaments and different masses and different worths and values, but it's the same gold in everyone. So you can't forget that one homogeneous being that is your very nature. Forgetting that would then mean to eventually forget to salute the sun. You even do that in Hatha Yoga, you do the salute to the sun, right? I hope you're remembering what you're doing when you do that physical exercise, and that you've read the Akshi Upanishad and know where the source of the sun and where the source of all suns is. Who's the offspring of the infinite? Go there. Then you may find the infinite. Because beautiful here that it says salutations to the excess of, salutations to darkness, which is the excess of light. One other, hard to understand, but one other Upanishad says that if Pipalada says if an owl looks at the sun, all he sees is blackness. See, so his eyes are not able to comprehend this great wash of light. Well, that's the same with your eyes when the light of Brahman. That's why you close them to see it. But in between there's this beautiful truth that actually an excess of darkness, see, is what it is. And this is where you get to teachings like Mother Kali is all black, but she's radiant blackness. And you get to Yoga Vashishta scripture, for instance, where one of the rishis goes inside and practices strict discrimination to find his way to enlightenment, and finds out that he sees the light and it makes him dizzy. But as he concentrates more on the light, he sees the blackness, and that centers him. See? So there's very deep meanings in these simple English phrases that started off as Sanskrit. And so it's quite an art to bring it into English if you can, and then of course a greater and deeper art to comprehend it. And the more you meditate on it, the more you'll comprehend it, and the more you'll see it in everything. You have to detox from things that are of a different form of darkness called ignorance. And then you have to acclimatize yourself to a new kind of light, seeing a new kind of light. Just like Barabbas walking out of the salt mines. You see, after working in there in the darkness, he couldn't adjust. It took him hours to see again. He hadn't seen the sun for so long. So this is a very pregnant teaching that I wanted to bring out too, that beautiful saying there where he says salutations to darkness, which is an excess of light. Now, back to the flood of days, which is one of the beautiful teachings. I think it grabbed me the most when I came upon it, is that people take for granted their lives, and lives are made of days and nights and so forth. But you just get into life, and there are 12 months in a year and 30 odd days in each month, and they just meld together, and time just seems like infinite in that way. And you age so slowly, basically, here on Earth, that you just, your childhood, your infanthood, your childhood, your young, mature man and woman, you've gone through so many thousands and thousands of days in each one of those phases of growth that you just sort of take it for granted that life is there upon you, and you can't even remember days that happened to you in the past once they go by. You remember some certain day. You see, oh, you better memorize your wedding day, or your wife will get mad at you. See? So you have to, there's some days that you're going to have to focus upon, and that's kind of an example. You see, well, when was I born, and what was my anniversary, and when did I, more importantly, when did I gain enlightenment? When did my ignorance die? Those were auspicious days. So they stand out to you. But the rest of them are just awash. Awash, as the English say. See, so the staff of the flood of days is a beautiful thing. I mean, you have to contemplate it. What a grace has been given us by having these endless days. As Vedantists, as Buddhists, as discriminating people, we could take the opposite view and say, I wish these days would get over and I just get out of the body and transcend everything. See, I'm waiting for my death, like Dalai Lama told us once. We Tibetans look forward to the day of our death. So there is that perspective. So you've got basically three kinds of people there. People who are suffering, and they're not enjoying their days. People who are happy, and they forget all their days and just enjoy. And then there are people who are striving to transcend day and night and get into a state beyond life and death, transcend the transmigratory process, which he's about to teach here, the first stage of yoga. You want to make sure you are never coming back here again. And that's the only fearlessness, that's the only doubtless state, and that's the prerequisite to all bliss, is to know that you don't have to come back here again as a child of other parents under the auspice of the ancestors and their karma. And otherwise, you're going to also always be brooding about it. See, even in your pleasure, you'll be brooding about it. Oh, I have plenty of food, I have money in the bank, so forth, but there's a hidden fear lurking back there. You know, when's all this going to end? Or when's my food not going to taste good to me when I go into tamasic cycle? Or when death is going to come to me all of a sudden? There's always this sense of foreboding behind everything. And basically that's one of the main reasons that monks become monks. They don't want to eat the food that would be taken from others' mouths. So they're very sensitive about how much they eat. They're very careful with each breath that they draw. And you know, they're dedicating themselves to an unseen principle within that other people aren't aware of. And so they're living very consciously, and each breath is sacred, and therefore each day would become sacred, and they would know the Lord of Days. So Surya Narayan is the Lord of Days. I could go on talking about that to try and impress it upon us, but and it wasn't the Akshi Upanishad's idea to put it on a staff. When I saw this, I had to put these various things, assign them to the image. So I thought, well, oh, look at the staff. You know, it's just coming down out of his own being. He's like granting life. Sun grants life, doesn't it? To everything. Nature wouldn't be there without the sun. Or if we were too close to the sun. So it can scorch everything and turn it into formlessness, just pure light. Or it can stand back a little bit, and you can stand back from it, and you can he can project you through his staff into the body with food to eat from nature and with light to warm yourself and a whole bunch of other things that I'm kind of jumping the gun on here, but let's get to them in the first half. So you can see there, maybe it would be nice to take the mantras. I was going to sing them actually, because you might even be able to sing them with me. If you look at this chart. Like, for instance, the first one up here, may we always and never meditate on the radiant effulgence of the Supreme Being. Can someone tell me what mantra that is?
Gayatri.
The Gayatri, yeah. So we say that. Om Bhur-Bhuvah Swaha Tat Savitur Varenyam Bhargo Devasya Dhimāhi Dhiyo Yona Prachodayat. So may we always never meditate on that radiant effulgence of the Supreme Being abiding in our hearts and minds. In our hearts, the light of love. In our minds, the light of wisdom. Abiding in our hearts and minds eternally through the flood of days. May He bless and protect us eternally and protect the three worlds. Three worlds are Bhur, Bhuvaha, Swaha, as listed in the Sanskrit. So that's one mantra for the light of Surya Narayan that we can say is the offspring of the infinite. And then we could also sing, as it listed, say, here. Om Natatra Suryabhati Na Chandra Tarakam Nema Vidyuto Banti Kuto Yamagnihi Tvameva Bantamarabhati Sarvam Tasya Vasa Sarvimidam Vibhati. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. One very, very deep, both Sanskrit and English words, there within the indivisible self of all beings. The sun does not shine, that's outer sun. The moon does not shine, fire does not shine, lightning does not shine, vidyu, much less this tiny mortal flame, that is prana, you see. This tiny mortal flame, man does not live by bread alone. That line does not shine there either. Only that one light shines there, and it makes every other thing radiant and effulgent. So may that one light of pure conscious awareness enter into us, permeate us to the very core of our being, is how we like to put it in SRV definition. So that's a beautiful sloka from the Upanishad. Then I put down here this other one too. It has to do with shining like burnished gold, highest and deepest core intelligence of living beings, partless and indivisible, ever pure, free of all taint, the essence of all beings, and the essence in everything which everyone seeks, either consciously or unconsciously, there shines Brahman. So that's also a beautiful chant in the Upanishads. So, shining like burnished gold, which is this being here standing before us. So, those quotes, easy to put in English, at least, there on the chart. And this takes us to the form of the sun god itself. You can see some of the entries there on his arms, and all in the rays that are coming off of him. There are these assignments that I've put that happen to correspond and correlate nicely to the actual Upanishad itself. So he says there, for instance, in the Science of the Wise that he propitiates him with, the glorious sun, the power of the eye to see. And goes on to say, 1,000-rayed, that's all the rays coming off of this the cosmic being, existent in myriad ways, the life of all animate beings, omniform, compassionate, omniscient, ambrosial, of the essence of light, the scorcher, and offspring of the infinite, the power of the eye, the flood of days, all hail, all hail. So you can see some of these have been entered here on the actual sun god. Starting down at his feet, you can see that there's a flower in his right hand. That's the eternal flower of life. You see, like, epitomizes the essential seed. And there you see on the garland is the garland of nature that's around his neck. And then the staff of the flood of days is there. We talked about that. Further up on his arms, you see on one side I've put the commander of the armies of light. So when there's any ignorance, he will send forth his legions of conscious light and destroy that. And even if he has to become darkness to do it, the excess of light, it's just too much for people to comprehend. And so they might as well, like an owl, be looking at a sun and trying to see the light, but it's just an excess of darkness. And so you could also assign that as Maya is kind of the excess of light. As you see through Maya, then you see that it's actually non-existent. It's just not evil and transcends suffering and those kinds of things. Is that it's all an incapacity of the body-mind mechanism to see beyond it, that's all. So the darkness, if anywhere, is there on earth. Every 12 hours, 24 hours, there's a period of darkness and back to light and so forth. So you could say that it's a place of dualities that way. But another thing you could say is that it's a hint to the secret of the sun god, is that sometimes he appears as light and sometimes he appears as an abundance of light that is darkness. So it's a different way of interpreting it and becoming aware of this great being. You can see the necklace around him, the explorer of the ethers, the sky wanderer. It's nice that find that, so that all these suns are as appearing in this sky of awareness. In the same way, the light of the thoughts of the greatest beings are appearing in the ether of consciousness and lighting up that whole periphery. So that's why if a meditating seer would see that light within and would want to find the source of it, like Samkriti is doing here, then he's going to repair to the solar line. You see the solar image. You see like beings like Sri Ramchandra and King Dasaratha, his father, and the great-grandfather, the Manu, was one of the Manus, Swayambhu Bhuvamana. So these are all beings of the light. They're the solar lineage. People here on earth are considering themselves to be monkeys. See, they go to their ancestors, they have to go to the monkeys. But the seers see themselves, their evolution is going inwards, not linear, outwards. They can't trace anything back to that gross estate. They trace it back to their eternal self. And so their ancestors become more and more profoundly aware of their true nature. My father and mother was an illumined soul, as you could say if you were one of those beings. If you're here on earth, you could maybe say my father and mother were good moral people, see? Or they were ignorant, or they were evil and raised me wrong. See? So all of this is a matter of not linear projection, but an inward involution that you can trace yourself back to, right on back to these beings of the solar line. Everyone can, really. Everyone can do that. In a way, it's just a matter of how long you've spun your wheels out here, how many births you've taken. Sri Ramakrishna said, the more births you take, the more you'll consider the world to be real. So there are people who've taken so many births without knowledge of their true self, without the dharma and so forth, without an ishtam, like God of light, to meditate upon, that they feel like this is the only world. So this is why they transmigrate. They get out of the body and they want to come back. You've heard the story of the camel eating thorny bushes. So it comes back as a camel again and again to have thorny bushes. Well, humans are much the same way with their desires. If all they know is just the senses and the objects, then that's what's in their mind, and when they pass, then that's what the seeds that are in their mind. They haven't watered any deeper seeds, so they're just coming back with ignorant parents. Krishna says that in the Gita. The restless people are born in restless wombs, and the slothful people are born in slothful wombs. Oh, don't worry, Arjuna, you're of a higher nature. You see, there are many births to take on earth, many wombs to be born in, but you're of a higher nature. So make ourselves aware of our true nature is to almost put Maya to death in one lifetime, or make it go away. Bring in the light, let the darkness go away. So how one thinks then is very important. What seeds one entertains and waters in the mind from lifetime to lifetime is extremely important, till finally you can claim your heritage as a birthless, deathless soul. And at about that time you'd be writing a stotram like Shankara wrote. Namrityorna Shanka Name Jati Beda Pita Naiva Me Naiva Mata Majanmaha Chidananda Rupaha Shivoham Shivoham. So namrityur, I have no death. Name jati beta, I never had a birth. Pita naiva, I have no father. Me naiva mata majanmaha, I have no mother. So there is no father or mother, and there is no birth and death, and there is no sun and darkness to a soul who's realized the eternal light of his own divine self. So this is where you would come to as a conclusion and as a default zone, if you will, while you're still in the body, because this Upanishad declares the ultimate goal of Jivan Mukta. He's getting to that. This 8 stages of yoga, which are a little different than the 8 limbs, remember, are all leading toward the Jivan Mukta state. And this is what my teacher, Swami Sheshanandaji Maharaj, may peace and bliss be upon him, always said to us all the time here in Portland over the 40 years he taught us. Jivan Mukta, you must become Jivan Mukta, a living liberated soul. It was the goal he was holding up to the American people. That would be the higher goal to go than just an intellectual frame of reference, say a genius or a very wise, worldly wise person. You must become a Jivan Mukta, living liberated. So all of that about this sky wanderer. We ourselves are sort of wanderers of light. And if you keep the light with you, you're protected against all darkness. We can then explore the ethers. How many ethers are there? Here in the West, there's one. And some people don't even acknowledge that. Earth, water, fire, air. Well, that's all there is, really. And then the higher thinkers think, well, isn't there an ether? You count that as one of the 5 elements? I mean, you could say, like Chinese and so forth, oh, there's wood and there's metal and all that. But that's earth. When you say earth in the 5 elements, you're saying all of that's contained in earth. And then there's water, and then there's fire and air. But then ether is a hidden verity, and therefore it's the one element that's best suited as a metaphor for consciousness, because it's undisplaceable. I can move this around, air moves, but ether doesn't. So ether just stays the same. It's very much like you when you take births. You stay the same, but you've projected your body, and that's in the realm of change. And the consciousness went with your body, forgot to stay with your undisplaceable self, you see. So right now you have an undisplaceable self somewhere that's animating you, isn't it? And isn't the sun the best representation of that? It's nourishing everything, it's giving you food, it's giving you flowers, nature, it's giving you air, earth, fire, water, and ether. So it's the explorer of the ethers, if you want to put it that way. And if you come in consciousness of it and put it in your awareness and identify with it, and like Samkriti's doing, go there and ask him for the wisdom that it knows, the source of wisdom, then you are all of a sudden sentient being on earth, a Jivan Mukta. You have access to your true nature right here in the body. Sometimes some philosophies propose that you're either, bound in the body, or you're free completely from bodies. So free completely from bodies would be Videha Mukti. That's also known in India, that beings will transcend bodies and never come back again. Buddha probably was one of those. But in India, they know that there's this possibility and maybe desirability to come into the form one last time, you see, and be a free, living, liberated soul. That will help the world, to see a soul like that. See others attain that. And then you know that not only can you attain it, but you are that. You just haven't realized it yet, like that soul has. Because they'll tell you, we'll be thee perfect. See? You didn't say you're a sinner. It's a worse sin to call another a sinner. You should be looking at everyone and calling everyone by their essence. Does the sun discriminate between the good and the evil? Doesn't the sun shine on saint and sinner alike? Isn't that a saying? And so be undiscriminating like the sun, see, about those kinds of things. And so explore the ethers. We could go on and on. We could take out the chart of the 5 Russian dolls, one inside the other, and show how there are 5 ethers actually, not just one that we're taught here in the West. But there's an ether of energy, prana, which is more like your ancestor realm. And then there's an ether of the mind, an ether of the intelligence, and an ether of the spirit, of consciousness. the akashas, they're called, 5 akashas. So, Explorer of the Ethers is a very powerful teaching that the sun god puts forth. Now on the left of that, there's physical light. On the right of that, there's sensual perception. So all of these things are also granted their moment of shining. See? That one light shining, all else shines. By its light, all is lighted. So physical body, the prana, the physical light that comes and the senses that are able to apprehend it are also granted their light to shine by this original light. And so on either side with these rays, I put the words and so that they're coming out with each one of these rays that comes off the sun god. You can see the second set there is knowledge and prana. So knowledge, even of a lower kind, is the light of the mind. It also has an origin. I would say knowledge, you trace it to wisdom, would be probably a more profound word than but they, we had that last week in San Francisco. If you're watching the live streaming from here in Portland, we had that chart on para and aparavidya. So it shows you the difference between lower wisdom or lower knowledge and higher knowledge, and a cathedral-like image behind it. So the lower knowledge would be our sciences and the Vedangas and etymology and languages and math and so forth. Those are apara, and they will be good to help you make your way, learn your make your living here, and will also, if used rightly, set you up to understand the higher knowledge, which is probably what should have happened when we found that everything here was made of particles, and before we started meddling with them to get their power. Then we should have seen that these outer particles, as hidden as they are in everything, really are the result of inner particles of our own thought. We didn't make that jump yet. Our knowledgeable people haven't made that jump yet. So people from another land had to come to us and tell us about different levels of consciousness, different akashas, different ethers, that different beings exist there, like your ancestors, that's where they've gone, and that there's a whole pantheon of knowledge that supports this. And from lower knowledge, then you get to higher knowledge, which starts with the dharma, which is what we're sitting here considering right now. And then from dharma you would get to truth, higher knowledge. Krishna says if knowledge is left alone and doesn't lead to truth, then it becomes dangerous. So our knowledge here is becoming dangerous, what we know about the secrets of nature, because we haven't connected it to the outer nature, to inner nature, both in the sentient and the insentient way. We haven't connected our thinking and intelligence to a higher intelligence, and we haven't connected outer nature, air, earth, fire, water, and ether, to the seeds they came from. And we haven't connected our outer senses, seeing, tasting, touching, hearing, smelling, to our dream senses from which they came. So we haven't made these yogic connections that we've talked about so much in SRV. Water, to the tongue, and earth to smell, and sight to fire, and air to touch. Those are random. It's just as random as the flood of days. We go through a flood of days, and the 5 elements are all around us and dancing, and they have prana in them, and they're connected, and we leave them unconnected. So our lives are disjointed, and suffering comes, especially later on. We can escape it only so far as prana allows us to. But then when the prana starts to wane, everything we based our life upon falls apart. We can't see. We can't enjoy nature. We can't enjoy our food and taste. So prana is beginning to exit. So that's one of the beautiful things you connect with the sun god, is prana. And according to Swami Vivekananda, you're going to want to connect that to psychic prana, because there's a prana that's causing you to lift your arm and your eye to see, but that's connected to your mind's prana. That's psychic prana, they call that. Manaha prana sambandha. You connect the senses to the mind, and to the prana, and the senses and prana to the mind, and you know that it all comes from the mind, then you're a knower of prana. And that would be like mastering the A of Om and going on to the U of Om, because then you connect that to your subtle senses. When your gross senses fall away, you have subtle senses in dream tonight. And that's the U of Om. And then you connect that to Shiva, the M, and everything. See how everything goes into deep sleep and just gets wiped out, and you don't know anything then. But there's a light there, a prana, that's sleeping like a hawk in its nest, Taittiriya Upanishad says. And that's watching everything. So when you wake back up, that prana initiates psychic to inner prana to outer prana. And you wake up, and everything is shining. But that witness has been watching everything all along. See? The source of that witness is the offspring of the infinite. All hail, Surya Narayan. So prana and knowledge there are very connected and very important. The next level of wisdom raised there are wisdom itself and the ability to comprehend things mentally. That would be connected to the psychic prana, as I was just saying. I jumped a little ahead there, but it's not just psychic prana, that's the connecting pin, the linchpin for that. It's that you're actually visiting a whole different realm of your mind with a whole different set of beings who are living in their minds. The yogis live more in their minds than they do in the bodies. You see that even with geniuses here on earth, great painters or great scientists and so forth. Almost the body is just inconsequential. There's really their mind that's there. And we see that in the sages and seers and sannyasins too, like my teacher. We were just talking about that this morning. Swami Sheshananda, when you watched him, he was just a mind walking around. He said a little tiny body, and it was kind of hunched over and old at the time, but just like Sri Ramakrishna describing Swami Vivekananda, his hair was always unkempt and his eyes had this faraway look. So he was just a walking mind, and the body was inconsequential. And that's why they describe it in the scriptures. It's just like an automaton walking around. But it's all intelligent thought there. It's a complex of intelligent thought that you're beginning to see it like leach through the outer body. So the ambiance you see, the aura you see, as it were, of a soul like that is just this concentrated mind walking around. And when you get close to it, you feel peace. That's what you feel, peace. If you were restless, all of a sudden you feel peace. Feel more like yourself again when you get close to that fire. Get away, start getting cold and numb. So you want to be close to holy company. So wisdom and mental comprehension on either side of those two wisdom rays. Then the next set is insight and intelligence. This mental comprehension has to go somewhere. And I was talking about teaching at a college a couple years ago and speaking in front of the students and telling them the very first words out of my mouth were, "What are you doing here again?" How many times you've sat in a classroom in front of a teacher? You know everything already. Of course, the teachers at this time are saying, "Who's this guy? Get rid of him," you see. Going into an educational system that makes its money from such things. Makes its money on people thinking they don't know. But they know everything. All knowledge lies within you. It's the second law of yoga. So you should probably be concentrating on your past lives and dredging that up, at least, rather than taking another lifetime thinking, I don't know anything, I'm a fool, I have to learn this, I have to grow. Those are all relative things. The Atman never grows. The Atman's all-knowing. It's the sun. It shines on everything. It gives everything its light. So the Atman is like that. And there you are, not acknowledging it, not conscious of it, and forgetting it in every lifetime, and sitting in class all the time in front of teachers who haven't realized their Atmans either, and parents who haven't realized their Atmans either are raising you. So you're caught in time, you're caught in space, you're caught in Maya, And isn't that what he says here? Salutations to the hamsa. You see? The blessed swan of the essence of purity, who is the prototype of the bound soul. See? The jiva. You're the jiva right now. If you don't know this and don't bring it forward and come to know it in this lifetime and put ignorance to death, make Maya, put Maya to flight for all time, and then be content and happy, meditate upon yourself and pass your time contentedly and be free. You don't have to go running after knowledge of any kind anymore. You bring it all to a close. Run down the curtain celestial and join the choir invisible. Make you and your ancestors and the gods all one thing. Everything outward, air, earth, fire, water, and ether, connected to everything inward. Earth would be solidity as a thought. Water would be liquidity as a thought. Fire would be radiance as a thought. Air would be homogeneity as a thought, and ether would be all-pervasiveness as a thought. The thoughts gave rise to the actual tattvas. So from the subtle to the gross, it stepped out. And now it just needs to return from the gross back to the subtle. I mean, if you wanted to sing it, it would be put very nicely by the rishis. Om Purnamadaha Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vashishyate. Om. So, everything that's internal is infinite, and everything that's external, though finite, is also eternal, isn't it? So from the infinite, the finite has come. Yet being infinite, only infinite remains. So there's infinite leaves, infinite trees, infinite ocean, infinite water. But it's all come from the subtle infinite. That's the gross infinite you're talking about. But since it's come from the subtle, it's just the same. You see, it's one indivisible, homogeneous mass of pure conscious awareness, which will be shown by the higher rays of wisdom that the sun has to offer. But this is what we say when we say insight and intelligence. You must be informed of your true nature. So you must hear the non-dual truth at some time in your life. And even if it doesn't materialize in that lifetime, you've planted a seed because you've heard it. Somebody came forward to your fortunate mind and said, oh, well, think this way for a change. You've been thinking you're a sinner. How about start thinking that you're an eternally perfect being? And let's just entertain that and see how it changes the landscape here. Landscape means these ethers that you're in. And maybe you will connect earth to taste, fire to sight, and all of a sudden you'll see that all of this has come out of you, from the infinite to the finite. And you'll write a sloka like that and leave it for posterity. Thousands of years ago they had that realization, that insight, and they left that for us to ponder now, here, in materialistic, bondage-ridden America, full of billions of jivas, bound souls. So insight and intelligence is a gift right from the sun god, Surya Narayan. And so meditate upon him, hail him. In your flood of days, hail him. Every day, maybe. If you walk out in the sun, you're just going to say, oh, it's so nice and warm. Or if you eat a carrot, you say, oh, it's just, and not acknowledge the source that provided it. This is all behind why you bless your food in our tradition. You don't just grab it at a store, or if you're so fortunate to have a garden, pick it out of the garden and just consume it without that that blessing of mantra that you put on it, so that it purifies it of all its defects, and then instead of turning to poison in your bloodstream that creates diseases, it turns to nectar in your bloodstream that creates enlightenment ojas and tejas. We have a chart on that you can get from SRV. See about how to purify your food by stages and use it for higher consciousness. And there, the culinary science reaches its apex. Nowhere else. Everywhere else, it's just impure prana or mixed prana that's leading you to death because you're taxing your organs by eating it, working your jaw, your digestive powers, your excretive powers. How long are you doing that? Over a flood of days. You're doing all that over a flood of days without any consciousness in it whatsoever, what to speak of intelligence and insight. What am I doing? What is happening? No, not what's apparently happening with your biology and your study of health regimens and all that. What's really happening? What am I doing? Nothing. What's really happening? Nothing. I mean, that can be taken two ways, either through ignorance or through the light of awareness. Through ignorance, it's all nothing because there's no meaning in it, and I'm just a materialist living in a material world, you see. But if I'm aware of everything, all of a sudden the light of the sun lights up everything, every thought, every perception. And what it lights up is that backdrop of Brahman. I go for refuge to that one Brahman who is the eternal gate to immortality and who is partless, faultless, indivisible, and actionless, and whose light turns our understanding towards the Atman. His light, you see, the light of the sun, the light of the infinite offspring, the offspring of the infinite, that light. The next two wisdom rays above that are on one side sentiency and the other side awareness. So you're getting to an apex now that's, as I said, that's very profound and hard to reach by the mind. The mind is beginning to go away now. Goodbye, mind. So there's a song in India, "O Mother of the Universe, Wisdom Mother, drive me completely out of my mind. What do I need of knowledge and wisdom and discrimination and thinking?" See? So you've reached a state now where you've understood. So what are you doing in class? What are you doing sitting there? You've understood. Now you need to turn it into a source of, turn it towards the source of everything. Knowledge has to lead to truth. Otherwise it's dangerous, Krishna said. So now you have to locate that sentiency from which it's all coming, your sentiency. Remember, along the way, you know what's insentient too. You found that out. Because down here, even the prana was not eternally sentient. See, it waxed and it waned. It waxed and it waned. It really did. It waxed and waned. So when it wanes, it pours. That's it. You're poor you see, when it wanes. So you need to realize that there's something beyond the prana. Man does not live by bread alone. Lives by a higher power. By that time you're tracing it to Surya Narayan, the offspring of the infinite. And it has revealed to you all these facets of itself, or the Upanishad. And we must also salute Samkriti, because he had the wherewithal to go to the sun god, find it, and ask him what's the highest wisdom. We'll get to that, beginning of that, at the end of the beginning of the second half of this class. But let's finish up this chart. We can look at it again tomorrow briefly for those who were not here today. We see there, above sentiency and awareness is Brahman and Mahashakti, or pure conscious awareness. And of course that's, if he's the offspring of the infinite, then the infinite is that Brahman Shakti. Because you know how Sri Ramakrishna used to put that, like that Shakti is the power in Brahman, see, to shine and to burn. It's like the burning power of fire, or it's like the whiteness in snow. So Brahman is that fire of consciousness, but Shakti is that power to burn, see. And so the two are one. Brahman and Shakti are one, like fire and its power to burn. So in that way we look toward something ultimate beyond the finest and subtlest of all forms. So beyond Surya Narayan itself, who is the offspring of the infinite, is the infinite itself. That's Brahman. I go to refuge in that one Brahman, whose light turns our understanding toward the Atman, as I chanted at the beginning of the class. So we took the whole first half, and I knew we would, to do this chart entitled All Hail Surya Narayan, with all the salient slokas, mantras out of these scriptures, and with all of these assignments that we can all reflect upon now. Memorize them well. You know, somewhere right now there's one young man who's thinking, I'm going to memorize that, and when Babaji comes back, I'm going to tell it back to him. So some people are beginning to memorize these charts, not just see them and go on to the next. So put it as a part of your wisdom. Install it as a part of your wisdom so you can always refer to it, just like many of you were reciting these with me by heart and by memory. So, all hail Surya Narayan. I think we have reached a good place to stop, and we'll go on to the early slokas of this Akshi Upanishad, this to see after the break, and we'll return in about 15 minutes. Thank you. Welcome. We have returned to the second half of this first class on the Akshi Upanishad. I'm sure the rest of the year in my other remaining 2 Dharma visits we will be taken up with exploring the slokas, which are beautiful too. We've been taken up completely entirely though with this opening invocation that the rishi has given to the sun god. Here's some notes on that just for us. As a conclusion, it says, the sun is the one who shows the truth, who scorches ignorance, who cleanses, is the embodiment of hamsa, the Atman, soul, asserts the Upanishad. Thousand-beamed sun is radiating in 100 directions, states the text. He is also the life-giving energy to all and empowers the eyes, brings peace to the mind. He moves me, states the Upanishad. Salutations, O sun. This is the Chakshushmati Vidya, says the text, recited by the sage Samkriti to Surya. So that's the science of the wise. When you approach a wise person, let's put it in terms we understand, you butter them up. So Krishna even says that in the Gita, Paripashyena, Pranipashyena, that beautiful sloka. And Upadekshanti te jnana jnaninas tattva darshinaha, and all of those beautiful quotes about knowledge and the way they get, the way one approaches the guru or the saint or the seer, the rishi, the luminary, with this kind of science of the wise, because you just approach them and say, how's the weather or how are you doing? And it's not the right way to approach a soul like that who is totally taken up with that. Otherwise you might render them into, in your own mind, into an ordinary being, which they're definitely not. Anyone who's had a guru that they've been devoted to knows this. So the Chakshushmati Vidya, the Vidya that causes you to see, opens your third eye, Jnana Chakshu, as it were. And so these Upanishads are all taken up with that one subject. Now we pretty much finished this chart, but since we have come upon this sloka at the end of the recitation that says, the blessed swan, who is the essence of purity and the prototype for the bound soul. So we know that, like Sri Ramakrishna was called the hamsa, paramahamsa. And in this day and age, he's really the one who deserves that august name that comes from the Upanishad. He is the supreme paramahamsa, but also avatara varishtaya, the representation of the best of all avatars to this date. So these are beautiful statements in the scriptures and in songs about him. So it says here about the hamsa. So here's a chart that I was able to put together some years ago, really, and just brought it into a color version. It's called Omkara, the silent call of the hamsa, and how a great soul like that really epitomizes this wisdom, this light of wisdom, and how that connects to Om. So I mean, in the Gayatri form, it's even said like that too. Ramakrishna Gayatri Om Hamsa Hamsaya Vidmahe Paramahamsa Dhimohi Tano Hamsa Prachodayat. So there are many forms of Gayatri. The one we know, Bhur Bhuva Swaha. And then there's ones to other beings, like the Durga Gayatri and Kali and Saraswati Gayatri. And so there's also one to the Hamsa, the Paramahamsa, the Great Soul. I put them all in a collection actually together into a hymn, and that may be released soon for people to hear and sing and memorize, hopefully. So if we go to the teachings of the Hamsa, as given by another great Upanishad here, you can see the Nada Bindu Upanishad it's called. We may study that someday. I took it up as consideration that, for the next Upanishad, but decided on this Akshi Upanishad, which is a little shorter. So Nada Bindu, Nada is divine sound, and then Bindu, of course, is that refers to this chakshu, or divine eye. And so we can take the last part of this invocation that Samkriti is given in the presence of the sun god, the science of the wise, and then find out that he's calling him the prototype of the bound soul. That is, he's the free soul from which the bound soul emanates, and because they forget their divine nature basically when they come through the curtain of Maya. And so that's why he says the blessed swan, or hamsa. Now you can see here from the Nada Bindu Upanishad in this chart, we'll leave this one up for people to keep considering as we end this divine propitiation of Surya Narayan into the slokas. Because remember, Surya Narayan is going to give Samkriti Brahmavidya because he's been pleased. So now he's opening up the gates. It takes a lot to have a soul like that be willing to teach you and open up this divine wisdom. You have to be qualified for it. And actually that's coming next. When we look at this next chart, it's the qualifications of the teacher with its new color background. And we've had this as one of the earliest charts I ever made years ago, but it's been put against a backdrop, colorized, and has to do with the 7 stages of knowledge. Like for instance, this morning, and we were talking about the 10 pure lands of Buddhism. So it's much the same way there are 7 levels of knowledge in yoga and Vedanta that you can gauge the higher qualification of a teacher and a realized soul. So it starts with Subhecha and goes on towards Turiya and so forth. So there are whole teachings we've given on that. There's another chart of the 14 stages of knowledge, 7 lower, 7 upper. And then there's these 4 qualifications of the teacher depending on the 7 stages of knowledge. So it's a deep Vedic teaching, and all having to do with qualifications. So that's why I'm saying, in order to get a person of that nature to open up to you and try and transmit the Brahmavidya to you, you have to be qualified to hear it. So you'll have to learn a little different language, and you'll have to do some practice and show some interest and be sincere. We often say that sincerity was the one thing which, or let's put it this way, insincerity was the one thing Sri Ramakrishna wouldn't abide in his students. If you were insincere, he'd send you to look at the temples. So you can still find that in the gospel. Some group of people come, he looks at them. By their features, he knows which ones are really sincere and which aren't. And to the insincere, he says, why don't you go look at the temple? Because they're all into outer stuff, you see. But he said, you, and you stay here. And so then he sees that they're sincere, that if he tells them something, it just won't go in one ear and out the other. That sincere ear, you see. And then they will stay and listen, and it'll take it in and make something into it in their life. That's what. Otherwise, doesn't want anything to do with you. It's just a waste of his time and a waste of your time. He used to say, for the worldly people, Maya is like a cat with her claws out. She'll scratch, but they'll suffer, in other words. But for a sincere person, Maya is like a cat with its claws indrawn and its teeth covered by its lips. So when mother cat picks up a kitten, it'll cover its teeth with its lips so it won't hurt the kitten. But if there's a mouse down there, she doesn't bother to cover her teeth with her lips. So Maya treats the devotee and the insincere person differently. And of course Mahamaya is in the quotient with the sincere person. She's looking for people who want to search for for wisdom with higher intelligence and have a pure heart. So she'll open up to them, and she'll make her sons and daughters, like Holy Mother, open up also to them. So Holy Mother opened up to us, took a body for the first time, possibly as a full manifestation of Divine Mother Kali, and in this day and age, and gave birth to dozens, now hundreds of sons, who have now made 5 million devotees because of their opening up and relating the truth of your eternal soul to you, your Atman, bringing that Brahmavidya to light again. And they were, had to be propitiated first. So Samkriti thanks to him for bringing this wisdom out. About Omkara, the Nado Bindu Upanishad says, the adept yogi who mounts astride the hamsa bird is never affected by karmic influences, or even by countless number of sins. Taking up a single posture and concentrating within his awareness, he hears the internal sound through the right ear, becoming deaf to all other sounds. Through such intense focus, he enters the Turiya state in a matter of days. Wouldn't that be nice? So we're talking about a soul who is not only qualified but practiced and prepared when they meet that soul who, even a whisper of 3 words into the ear will, in the old days, ancient times, used to awaken the soul right away to its true nature again. It's like all of a sudden, having a secret and then forgetting it, and then someone reminding you of it. Oh, I forgot about that. Only on a spiritual level. Take that same metaphor on a spiritual level. You forgot about your true nature when you came here, and so the hamsa, you go to the hamsa and ask, and all of a sudden it tells you, and you wake up to it. It should be a matter of a few days. But in the Kali Yuga, it's really not that. It takes a little bit more effort on our part. For instance, who rides the swan? Is when mounts astride the hamsa bird. Which goddess rides the swan? Saraswati, yeah. Bani Saraswati Vakdevi Bhagavati Parvati Mampahi Vinapani Hamsavahini Vedanta Rupini Palayamam Mani Saraswati Vakdevi Bhagavati Parvati Mampahi. So we hear about Saraswati, the Vakdevi. She rides the swan, that's her mount. And that's the white swan. And if you see images of Saraswati, you'll see that there's a peacock, a second bird in the image too, you see. So that's usually behind her. It means she puts the color, the glitter of the world behind her. And the white swan she rides, and that's her status. She's Sarva Shukla Devi, all white. She rides a white swan, she wears a white gown, she has white lotuses, all sorts of things that have to do with pure white, stainless consciousness and so forth. So the hamsa would be an example of a divine vehicle for the goddess in her wisdom form, like that. And if you actually look scientifically into the study of the swan, it's the most unique bird. It's got so many unique features to it that other birds don't have. And we're not sure if it can separate milk from water with its saliva. That's a story in India that if you put a bowl of mixed milk and water in front of the swan, it'll down there and take only the milk and leave the water. So whether that was actual or not, we'll have to find out, but it was a story Sri Ramakrishna told, because she'll discriminate and take only the essence and leave the non-essence behind. So she's telling you how to do that in your spiritual life. not get so obsessed and bent out of shape by non-essential things and forget your essence, but just stay to the essence. Quaff that nectar of Amrit only. We're studying in San Francisco last week the end of the Amrita Bindu Upanishad, which is another minor Upanishad with the 8 or 10 people that gathered down there. A lot of youth were there, which we like to see. So this quote then has a lot to do with hearing that sound in the right ear. It's interesting because Holy Mother said that too. And of course it would stand to reason, because if she is the emanation of Kali, Lakshmi and Saraswati in this age, as Sri Ramakrishna said she was, then she would know these Upanishads and would say that she made mention of that. When you hear the divine sound, when you hear it in the right ear, that's the authentic version of it. So you follow that. And so you follow it inward. Sri Ramakrishna said it's like hearing the ocean at a distance, but there's lots of sand dunes. So you go closer and closer, the sound gets louder and louder. It's beginning to take your mind away from the world completely, as Sri Ramakrishna said in the Gospel before we were reading, before the live stream joined us. And so finally break over the last sand dune, and there's the ocean with people swimming in sailboats. And so if you heard it from a distance, that's what the meditator does, hears this sound. In fact, let's read this next quote. In early practice, the practitioner hears the sounds like oceans, like thunderclouds, or kettle drums. Later, he hears sounds like the tinkling of bells, flute, or veena. Veena pani hamsa vahini, we just sang that. She holds the veena and she rides the hamsa. So the veena is like a sitar-like instrument. It's more ancient than the sitar, the Indian instrument that's somewhat similar to that, stringed instrument. So here's a sound like bells, flute, or the veena. Very apropos. Passing all of these one by one, the yogi absorbs the chitta, that's the thoughts, into the primal sound of Om, and renders the mind silent. Very nice. So if you're liking the Amrita Bindu Upanishad, if you like the Adhyatma Upanishad, and if you're already liking the Akshi Upanishad, you can look into the Nada Bindu Upanishad. That may even be in that little book the Ramakrishna Order has put out. I'm not sure. But it's called the Minor Upanishads. You can read them in 2 minutes. Have you read the Upanishads? Yeah, I had 2 minutes. Yesterday I read one of them. So there's this little short one that, it happens. And so what is all of this about Omkara and its connection to the swan? Well, it's this, that the 4 matras and the presiding deities are all represented by the swan. Its head is Ardha Matra. Ardha Matra means, this particle that you in third eye, when you go into and you cut it in half, the yogis say, and the soul can then pass through it, pass through Maya. So it's an inner seeing that is accomplished by, and so that's what the swan's head would represent. The presiding deity there is Varuna. You see that earth, air, water, fire, and ether have a lot to do with these symbologies, the 5 elements. You can say on either side of the scope, because people get attached to the 5 elements, and when they die, they have to give them up. So like say if you run out of breath when you die and you're having a hard time breathing, you're giving up air. It's forced upon you. You have to give it up. Or if your eyes burn, you see, and then you're giving up fire, or your body's heating up, so you have to give up fire. It's forced upon you. Or if your tears run, you're giving up water. If your mouth waters and your tongue gets dry, you're giving up water. You see, so all of these symptoms at death is just a sign of taking back the 5 elements. You projected them through your subtle senses, connected to your mind, connected to the word. So now you have to take them back. Take back everything you said. It's like you insulted the God of formlessness. So the God of formlessness says, you insulted me by taking on form. Take it all back. has to happen to everyone. It's called death. And it's illusory death, because the soul was never born. It can never die. So it's the body ego that's going through this. So you should remember that if you get ill or you pass into a state where you think you might be leaving the body, then it would be good if you could remember these things, and if you, as you're leaving the body, not panic, but just wait. Oh, I'm divorcing from fire now, I'm divorcing from air, and so forth. And then pretty soon everything turns to light, his light, and that's when you're getting rid of ether. You know, the sun has lit up the worlds for you, and the air, skies and everything. So you're giving up nature, basically, if you want to put it all into just one huge renunciation. Because the soul is not nature, it has to give it up. Nature was projected from the soul via the mind, and the word was in the quotient. See, so all of this cosmology is very important and connects to higher philosophy, and then connects to truth. And if you've forgotten it, like in a culture like we're in, then you should, like telling those kids in the classroom, why are you still sitting here? Concentrating on the lower knowledge. Yeah, here's your chance to come to me, or come to the hamsa, and find out about higher things. Here's your chance. And so reacquaint yourself with the knowledge which is your own birthright and your own heritage. There's no reason why you shouldn't do that, even if you're doing it as an interest. You see, what do you do when you're not working? Oh, I have a pastime. I look into Samkhya Yoga, see, or I read the Gita. See, so for some people it'll just be kind of a pastime. They'll read it, say I've read it, and they'll go on. But you can see how deep it goes if you want to linger a little bit. Say on a sloka of an Upanishad with a teacher. Linger there, you see. As you're beginning to find out how to propitiate the wise, but you're also beginning to find out how to become the wise yourself, how to be gifted your own knowledge back to you. There was a veil over it, the teacher's just pulling it off for you. That's what Ecclesiastes meant when he said, there's nothing new under the sun. Interesting statement, huh? Nothing new under the sun. The sun knows everything and reveals everything, and you're hiding under clouds. You're running away from sun. Swarupanyata bhava, Tantra calls it. You're the divine self, but you're finding every way possible to get away from it, from your own divine self. Isn't that how people are acting? But swarupa pratistam, pratistam means I become steady in the knowledge that I am the self, and that nature and body and senses and everything is just an add-on due to my own knowledge. Everything consists of knowledge. So for the enlightened soul, everything is made of particles of knowledge. Simultaneously and at the same time, mysteriously enough, to the unenlightened soul, everything is made of physical matter to enjoy. So why you separate the wheat from the chaff and shift your consciousness over to the real from the unreal. And then it's not just a pastime anymore. It's a divine preoccupation. It becomes you and you become it. It's very becoming. But you want to be pure being. So these two slokas from the Nadabindu Upanishad reveal to us both the nature of Om and how it connects to the Hamsa, and also these experiences that you'll have when you focus on it. Some people will go more toward the light, you see, and some people will go more toward the sound. So these are kind of visionary people, and this is kind of mystical. You see, the sound is a more mystical thing, and this is more visionary. So there are, spiritually speaking, there are really kind of two subdivisions, two different categories of seeking soul who go by those paths. But they say that sound turns into light and light turns into sound in either one of these trajectories. It all ends up with that, in that one Brahman. And so metaphors cease to exist, and And you just return to your homogeneous realization of the one indivisible and all-pervasive being in all things, all beings in all things. So the Ardha Matra then is its head. That is that essential particle is its head, and it's presided over by Varuna. Now, its right wing is the A of Om. That also is Atman, and its presiding deity is fire. I'll go through these first. Then the U is its left wing, and that stands for Upanishad. Nice that these words and letters go together as correlatives. And the presiding deity there is Vayu, air. So you see how the elements, as elements, sort of draw people out, and they're only going for the outer. But there's an inner significance to the five elements. They have deities. And this is why people have worshipped nature elements, like early man worshipping fire and all that, or people on an island worshipping water. They better. So all of these have inner deities assigned to them, and that's what the more intelligent, secularized society and people will not understand. They do not like to look at it as deities or something mystically existing inside of them. They're not into that at all. So if you're to communicate the wisdom of the Upanishads to beings like that, you're going to have to take a different tact and just describe it to them as energy, see? Different kinds of energy. And maybe if some people are neither attracted to deities or energy, you can approach them at the non-dual level and say, well, look at it as your own consciousness. So these teachings of the Upanishads are eternal, and we have to find ways in these new societies and contemporary times to make them amenable to people's thinking processes. And so they can understand them on the level that they do understand. One person might, be more attracted to the gods and goddesses, and another person might be more attracted to transcendental light or sound and so forth. Now there is M, the final matra of Om. Matras are like particles. They're also like letters, and each letter has a deep significance to it, has particles in it. And it's both difficult and easy to understand that. And depending, you think about splitting the atom and so forth, and you're talking about something that's decidedly external, with an external power that comes from it. But you also have to think that that your mind is made of particles, and those are called intelligent particles. And if you split those release wisdom to you. Not power outside, but subtle power inside. And that's the way I would explain it. And I've actually authored a book called Jnana Matra, which has to do with how to find your intelligent particles as streams of light. See what we mean? Wisdom rays. He's all famous for that. So we have to look at it differently and find the connection to our Atmic wisdom through these wisdom rays that are emanating out, and as far out as air, earth, fire, water, and ether. 5 elements. In India they're called the Pancha Mahabhutas, the 5 great elements. So they're not belittling them at all. True, you have to transcend them. True, they're gross, not subtle. True, they're full of pleasure and pain. And all sorts of other truisms are there with them. But as principles, they're indicators for what's inside of you. And if you use them that way, then if you're Vedantic, you can get to the transcendent bliss that you want, or if you're Tantric, you can deify them and worship them. If you're worshiping them, you're worshiping not just but you're worshiping the god of water, not just you, but the god of fire rather, and so forth. You're worshiping all these various deities at the same time, and they're getting pleased, just like Samkriti is pleasing Surya Narayan to give us this Upanishad. See? Very few people can go and fish an Upanishad out of the sun god. See? Tease it out of him. See? Had to do it very carefully, and had to do it with the science of the wise and in a qualified soul to be able to hear this wisdom, which you'll hear some of the slokas soon. We're taking a lot of time on the introduction because it is so unique and so beautiful. Now, its body, how about the swan's body? This body is all the worlds. Burloka, here we go to Bur, Bhuvar, Swahar, right? The three lokas. We generally understand them as outer, inner, and transcendent, or sometimes we understand them as earth, intermediate realms, and heaven. So Bur, Bhuva, Swaha are famous for these different triple designations. Brahma, Vishnu, Shiva, all these things are triple designations, are called triputis. And there are many of them that connect, that help people understand and make the connections inside themselves. They're already connected, so it's not like, oh, I have to put them together. They're already together, but you've rendered them apart, so you have to put them back together. It's Humpty Dumpty time, you see. And all the king's horses and the king's men cannot put it together. You have to do that yourself, or never climb on that wall in the first place, off of which you fell. So these seven worlds, are worlds that the soul descends to. And some of them are very high and very beautiful. Swami Vivekananda said Sri Ramakrishna was the presiding deity of Brahmaloka. Satyaloka it's called here. So that's a realm that the soul is just that close to merging. The hailstone is that far from hitting the ocean, as it were, and just dissolving itself. So it's going into a formless state. So Brahmaloka, in a sense, you'd say it would be like correlative to this center. Because if you go beyond this center, from the 2-petaled to the 1,000-petaled, in Kundalini speak, then you're merging in the highest center, which is indescribable. Here, something can be described. It's a visionary center. You may be hearing flutes and venas and kettle drums and so forth still. Or maybe that happened even before that center opened here. Hearing is so associated with this chakra, Agya chakra. Vishuddha chakra, Agya chakra, then Sahasrara chakra. So these seven worlds then, Bur is its feet, Burvarloka is its knees, Svarloka its loins, Maharloka its navel, Janaloka is its heart, Taparloka its throat, and Satyaloka is its forehead. So these seven worlds constitute the hamsa's body. So back to the Upanishad, wherein we read that in myriad ways it rises, and it's the prototype of the bound soul. So the hamsa would be the original soul. Like Sri Ramakrishna, we look at him today and they say that he's the condensed essence of 1,000 years of Hindu thinking. So for 1,000 years, the Hindus have been studying their Upanishads, studying their Bhagavad Gita, doing their pujas, gaining enlightenment, destroying ignorance, doing sadhana, on and on. You see, all the 4 yogas have all been in their mind as a culture, either specifically or sometimes generally, because the Hindus of today have fallen, as Vivekananda said, away from a lot of this wisdom. But there is 1,000 years of millions of people concentrating on something high. So it had to have its effect. There it is in the body of Sri Ramakrishna. They brought him forth. He's like Gopala in that sense. He's the baby Krishna that they loved so long ago, and he has to come back again. And guess who he brought with him? If you doubt him at all, then just look who's around him. Good Lord, how can you deny it? The Divine Mother came with him, and the Nityasiddha, the perfect soul, Vivekananda, came with him. The world teacher, Swami Brahmananda, came with him, and a whole host of 14 other direct disciples who were all realized in their own way, came with him. And then this extended family, and you too, everyone in this room, a part of that extended family. And some 5 or 6 million people now in the physical world coming aware of the hamsa, the true hamsa. So with these 7 worlds, we see how all-pervasive it is, this hamsa. Again, Saraswati's mount, mentioned in the Upanishads, and a prototype of the bound soul, that we can go to release ourselves. This is our true self, and this is our unreal self we've taken on. If you take on the unreal self knowingly, then all is Brahman and you're okay. See? But if you forget your true nature, that's where suffering kicks in, karma and so forth. Now, as if that were a further enough extension, look at all of this. If you contemplate death in the first kala, that is the first phase of time, you're born next lifetime as an emperor. If you contemplate death in the second kala of time, you're born as a yaksha. If you contemplate death, a yaksha is like a demigod, you might say, closest word we can find. If you contemplate death in the third kala, and then you're born as a vidyadhara, that is a holder of wisdom. You hold wisdom for others on this earth. If you contemplate death in the fourth kala, you're born as a Gandharva, a celestial musician. You have abilities in the arts, like Saraswati Veena and her scripture. You're holding wisdom, that's her scripture, and you're also able to be accomplished at the arts. Then she's giving you her Veena, and she's giving you her scripture to hold for others. Vidyadhara, Gandharva. If you contemplate death in the fifth kala, you're born a god, Deva. You take your position as one of the gods. Don't think that's also high. It's higher than Christian heaven, I would say that. It's beyond the angels. But nonetheless, it's a being that's attached to having dominion over many souls. And there are many benign gods, but they also have a little bit of it's a good word, rascaliness in them. See, they can give and they can take away. Just like a rich man can do that. If you're contemplating death in the sixth kala, you become united with Indra. Now, Indra is the god of gods, so they're controlling these various worlds that we find associated with Au and Em and the Lokas and so forth. But he's controlling all of them. So he's the overlord. He's the god of gods, Indra. And Surya, as portrayed in this chart, is higher than Indra. See? So you have a kind of a gradation going on of beings in these worlds. This is cosmology that has lasted for not just thousands of years, but for thousands of cycles of years. 4,320,000,000 years, like 480,000 times 2, that number times 4, that number times 8. These are yugas that go by, and 4 of those is a Mahayuga. And there's a certain amount of Mahayugas in a Manvantara, which is a longer cycle. And then finally, when everything melts away, there is Pralaya. Mother Kali says, when everything melts away, there is Pralaya. Everything merges back into Brahman. Everything is soluble into Brahman, Sri Ramakrishna said. So I'm giving you this. Come to the retreat up the Wind River, the Columbia River Gorge here next weekend, and we'll talk a little bit about India's look at time and space, Akasha and Kala. So Kalas, we're talking about phases of time here. Why death? Because you survive Kala. You survive death. Your soul is not subject to Kala, nor Yama, nor Karma. It's ever free, never bound. And this is the real you. Now will the real you stand up. And when that's the case, the light of the sun shines upon you and you stand up, you stand out. See, I am free. You're saying, I'm a free soul, I'm not bound anymore. As long as you're bound in any way, you have to have the prototype. That's why Vivekananda said, you must have an ideal in this world. If you don't have an ideal, a higher ideal, then you're lost here. And you may think you're found your whole lifetime and realize at the time of Kala that you're not. That you're bound into limitations of your own design, your own limited thinking. So you want to slough those off as soon as possible, and this is the quickest way to do it, Vivekananda said. You can do it slowly through bhakti. You can do it very quickly through jnanam. Understand. Do away with your ignorance. The sun should shine through, because he's the one that's scorching your ignorance. Oh, let's see, he's not only scorching your ignorance, he's also scorching your sins. There's no darkness possible to a sun. So you meditate on the sun, Vivekananda said. So this is the best of all suns to meditate on. And Paramahamsas do that, you see, before they come to earth. That's why they bring so much light, as they're filled with the light of Surya Narayan. Making connections in that way. So why death? Because you're a birthless, deathless being and you think otherwise. So you have to destroy death over these phases of time. So that's why you're born united with Indra. Be a very good friend to have in high places, above the gods. How about in the seventh kala, or seventh phase of time, you're born in Vaikuntha. Where's that? Well, within you, of course, but who presides? Krishna or Vishnu. Vaikuntha, Vishnu. It's the holy city of the Lord. So if you're born in that city, you'll never have to be drug into the cycles of transmigration again. This way you love Krishna all your life, or you love Christ all your life, or you love Buddha all your life. It's the same for each religion. Divine Mother makes this the same. And all souls can then come through the many facets of that one diamond to their own essence via the prototype. The prototype is perfect, ever perfect. The one light shines, heaven's light shines, earth's shadows pass. Life is a many-colored dome that stains the pure white light of reality when it comes through it. So the poet Shelley said that. Life is a many-colored dome that stains the pure white light of reality. So when it passes through the dome of the mind, with all its different facets and all its different lokas and billions of different souls at different levels in different phases of time, all thinking that they're born and they die, then it gets stained. So the light you're seeing here is stained. That's why pollution can get in front of it. Clouds can cover it. It's just all a metaphor for the sun of your own wisdom that should ever shining. But you're not there, you see. You're absent. So be present. If you're contemplating death in the eighth kala, you're born in Kailash. That's Shiva's divine place. And Shiva will render everything formless for you. That's for beings who are seeking transcendent wisdom. If you're born in the ninth kala, contemplating death, you're born in Maharloka. Okay, here we are. We start to connect to these lokas, the fourth. So obviously you're not going to be reborn again. Maharloka is a place of the great souls, Maha. You might say the Mahat presides there, cosmic mind. Death contemplating the 10th kala, you're born in Janaloka. The 12th and 11th kala, if you contemplate death, in Tapar Loka, that's of course for the austere, the ascetics. They don't need anything anymore. All they need is their self, so they're practicing strict tapas of renunciation and so forth. They're They're in a place of nothingness except bliss, the bliss of realization. And of course, contemplating death in the 12th and final kala, you attain to non-return. So Svarloka, it's called, Satyaloka. Or sometimes that's called Brahmaloka. So you attain to non-return. How Sri Ramakrishna ever talked Swami Vivekananda into coming out of Satyaloka and taking a body in this earth, we don't know. But I know 3 songs that sing about it that have been written by realized souls about how this divine child appeared in Vivekananda's meditation and said, "I'm going down to earth, will you come with me?" And so they entered the star-strewn path, the song says, and lo, they were born there on earth in Mother India, in that Calcutta, or Kolkata, that place. See. So he convinced the highest perfect soul of Satyaloka, Brahmaloka, to come out of his formless meditation that he had been in for, Holy Mother says, 700 years. And like a wooden statue still, as the prototype for that particular loka, and convinced him to come down to Calcutta and take a body in the 1800s. And just give us 39 years of Brahmavid. And to jump the ocean like Hanuman did, to bring it to the West. Nobody would dare do that. See? And both the Christians and the Hindus didn't like him for doing that. Many of them. The Brahmin priests rejected him. The Christian fathers didn't like him. But he said, I'll make an offering of everything they write about me in the newspaper to the fire god. He knew Surya, and him and Surya Narayan were like that, you see. So he just offered all that slur and that slander, that mudslinging, those false stories that people tell that cause trouble into the fire god and dispensed with him and went on with his work. And we're sitting here understanding this much because he did. The only thing else about this chart, which is actually pretty comprehensive, isn't it? Putting together the mantras of Om with the prototype called the Great Swan, which is mentioned in the Akshi Upanishad, and also talking about, and therefore connecting us to the Word, which is at the beginning of all origins. So these are by way of life and death, by way of time, by way of space, lokas, and by way of the word itself and what's beyond it. We're getting like 4 or 5 ways in which we can understand our true nature, or at least climb on the path that leads to it. Set our feet on the path to that highest summit. I went up to St. Helens yesterday, and there it was. It had no peak. But 2 months before it blew up, I was up there at Snowline, just where the forest ended, and listening to it rumble underneath me, meditating on a rock there, like 2, 3, 4 months before it went off. A few months after it went off, I came back and I saw ashes had come over my mother's roses in Portland, you see, around her house. So I was thinking how ephemeral this world is, and how symbolic, how horrible and how beautiful. So that mountain was a saint, see, gave great teachings. So the last aspect of this chart are the 12 kalas, because we're talking about the first, second, third, fourth kala. What are those kalas, symbolically speaking, in the scriptures? Well, first there's the resounding form of Mother. Goshini it's called. Resounding. So you can see how that would apply to what the seer hears. Kettle drums, tinklings of various things. What's resounding in the soul as vibration when it gets closer to its own nature. There's Vidyamali next. Vidyumali, the lightning wreath. In my own life I've seen a lightning wreath. I was taking Jaima music on the road, giving concerts, trying to introduce this wisdom through song around the United States back in the 70s and 80s. And I was very tired after one concert. I think it was in Ohio or somewhere like that, where I'd played at this large gathering. And I was very tired, and I excused myself after the concert and I went out to my van that we were carrying the equipment around and just sat there. As I sat there, very tired after this long day of driving and concertizing and speaking, all of a sudden the thunderstorm came in that part of the country. It's very famous for that. And as I watched the lightning start to form, at one point I saw a lightning wreath, like 6 or 7 different lightnings going off at the same time, connected in a halo above me. And it shocked me. It just really shocked me. And I lost all my fatigue went away. It's like I was hit with it. I went back in, hi everyone, I'm back. So I think about that when I think about Vidyamali, the lightning wreath. It's just like restorative, this power that comes from her. Mother of wisdom. Then there's Patanjini, sun-drenched. That's a good one for Surya Narayan. Then there's, and these are phases of time, the presiding deities over these phases of time. At Pralaya, everything will dissolve away, and that's the end of time. It was never real in the first place. It was a projection, a dream that lots of people had. And it was a measuring tool. If he's the flood of days, then you might as well say he's also the god of time. It's like Shiva, lighting everything up. There's Vayu Vegini, wind speed. It brings to mind these channels that run through you. They're nerves when they're physical, nerves and blood vessels, but in your breathing process, it's in and out breath. And then in your mind, it's thoughts that run along channels. So Vagini brings to mind that kind of teaching, that energy of different kinds is running through the body-mind mechanism, and all of it is connecting back up to the sun of knowledge. Vayu Vagini, so the wind blows through different channels. It's like if it got really windy up the Columbia River Gorge, then that would be a physical wind blowing up a channel, you see. But take that and imagine it, inside of you, that Vayu, the prana, the wind that's blowing, the wind of your energy, or the wind of your thought, is blowing in an interior channel. And then you just take it to the subtler and subtler, finding to a causal area. As the meditations, like in Buddhism, are based on that. You're supposed to purify your first chakra with the wind of earth. The wind of earth, that doesn't make sense, you see. And then the next chakra it's got lust in it, so you purify it with the wind of fire. And then there's the wind of air and the wind of ether. So these chakras all get purified by subtler wind, vayu, but not as physical wind only that purifies the Big Island right now. I got a call yesterday. You see, say, we have nice weather. The wind came. It's blowing trade wind south, and it's starting to blow the ash all away, so we can breathe again. You see. And one of our students, if you're watching, this is Sanat in the Big Island. He said, "Oh yeah, the wind is saving us from all the ash and all that. We live right near that explosion, you see." So that's Vayu's grace, blowing. I mean, he's probably one of the more rascally of all the gods. It doesn't always work for you. Go out in a sailboat, he stops. Leaves you stranded. He laughs. Oh, look at them down there. So then subtler wind is blowing, you see, at each of the centers. So wind is just not a physical thing that's random and happens on the earth only. You have to take it to its source. And you become a knower of the source as you do. You want to do that with fire and suns in the sky and so forth. Take them to their origin, their source of origin. Then Aindri is the pure sensed form of time. Vaishnavi of Vishnu. See, that's why you get born in Vaikuntha. Then Shankari of Shiva. She's the mother of time of Shiva, Shankari. I know a couple women named Shankari, like consort of Shiva. Mahati, the great. Dhriti, the resolute. Nari, the feminine. And Brahmi, the whirlwind. So each of these are allocated to different aspects of the mother, prominent in different phases of time, kala. In Tantra you study that. It's one of the 6 ways to get highest wisdom. It's called kala, time, study time. And then kalas, phases of time, is another way to get it. So we have a chart on that. It's called, 6 phases of gaining Brahmagyan in Tantra. It's beautiful teaching. So there we've covered it, and some of it is a bit esoteric. You have to hear it a few times and put it into action in your own meditations. But you see how time, worlds, space, the word Om, and the prototype soul is all connected in this chart. And this is all, to me, coming out of this mention of the blessed swan or hamsa, the essence of purity, who is the prototype of the bound soul. So I think there, when we have a good 20 minutes or so, it would be nice to take the first sloka. Guess what? We spent 2.5 hours just in the introduction, and I think you'll agree it was good that we did so, because we saw both the perfect soul and we saw the sun god. We know who we're saluting and how we connect to them in various ways. This is how to unwrap an Upanishad or any great scripture. Now, part 2 is Brahmavidya. Remember before it was Chakshu or Chakshushmati Vidya. Chakshushmati was, this is allowing you to see what's about to happen and what has happened in the past. But now you get down to what Surya Narayan replied to Samkriti once he was propitiated. Once he was used the science of the wise to butter him up, and Surya Narayan said, "Oh, that's very good, thank you. I'm feeling so good now about myself." See? Now I'm going to give you the Brahmavid. So here's the first sloka then. The second section of the Upanishad opens with the sage Samkriti asking the sun for Brahmavid. Literally, he's asking him. The Brahmavid means the knowledge of Brahman. Not Lord Brahma, but the infinite. He's the offspring of the infinite, so he should know about the infinite. So Samkriti is chosen well, his guru, his deity. He wants to go to the sun god and ask about the infinite. Since the Upanishad says he's the offspring of the infinite, so he's near the source. The rest of the text contains the answer structured as a discourse from Surya, wherein the sun god states that this knowledge leads to liberation and freedom while one is still living. That's called Jivan Mukta. So here's the really main premise. You have Brahmavid as the way and Jivan Mukta as the goal in this Upanishad. So it's a very profound, very non-dual Upanishad, in spite of, or because of, maybe, it bringing in this deity of light. Who else better to describe Brahmavid than the deity of light? Okay, so these are just my notes at the beginning, but here let's go into part 2 and take the first sloka. Then verily Samkriti said to the sun, "Blessed one, teach me Brahmavidya." The sun replied, "Samkriti, listen. I shall set forth the knowledge of reality that is so hard to come by which knowledge alone will you become liberated while living in the body." So he's jumping straight to the chase. He says, you want to, if you're still an embodied soul, and actually Samkriti's physical body is probably back sitting somewhere in meditation in front of a shrine or on a mountain, and he's gone internally and transgressed these kalas, and, and time itself and come right to the source, and he's asking for wisdom right there in his meditation. So his body is just like your body is back laying on its bed when you're dreaming, and your senses are shut down and everything. See, he's doing this consciously in meditation, gave up his body and went into a high state of mind and concentrated with all his heart and all his mind on Surya Narayan, so he can get Brahmavid from the source. See? And so beautiful to have the sun speak forth all of a sudden, the God of light speak forward. So this knowledge is so hard to come by, but by this knowledge alone will you become liberated while living in the body. So we'll salute him as we pass from that highly favored chart and look at this chart. Now you have all seen this before. Maybe you remember it. It's been a while since we discussed it, but it's been given this new backdrop of color. And this was actually one of the, I think this was the image behind our last Nectar issue, Holy Mother, the bridge below it, and Swami Vivekananda down there talking about how people pass over the bridge, over the ocean of samsara. Well, we're going on retreat at Windward Waters, some 40 miles away, next weekend. That's where I took this picture. I went across the bridge of the gods, of all things, and took this picture from the other side, and then had the artist superimpose Holy Mother behind it. So this is Oregon, folks, and this is the bridge of the gods that I came across, and it became the Nectar cover. So now we're using it as a backdrop for the knowers of Brahman. This chart is called the 4 levels of knowers of Brahman. So Samkriti wants to become a knower of Brahman, and so he's gone to the sun god to get the Brahmavid that will qualify him to be a knower of Brahman. Come to find out that there are 7 levels, really, of knower of Brahman. That is, these 4, but there are 7 stages by which you accomplish becoming a deeper knower of Brahman. There's Brahmavid, there's Brahmavidvara, there's Brahmavidvaraya, and there's Brahmavidvarishta. Varishta means to be eternally established in Brahman. Like Avatara Varishtaya, you hear that chanted. This is the avatar that's the highest and best among all avatars. Represents the highest and best of all divine incarnations. So this master of Brahmavidvarishta would have attained Turiya, but these lesser knowers of Brahman would maybe have only attained up to Padartha Bhavana or up to Asam Shakti and so forth. However, if you find a teacher that at least has Brahmavid, that's a qualified teacher, and you can take him as your guru, as your guide. Now, Brahmavid then, if you trace it backwards, is the last one of these qualifications for a teacher. You want to know what a teacher must have to be able to teach you authentically. He must have a kamahata. He must not have any selfish motive for giving you the teachings. I think you could put that clearly by saying, I would like you to be free of suffering, or I would like you to have your ignorance destroyed in this lifetime and be free. I want you to join the knowers of the lovers of God and remove all obstacles. See, and that would be a description opposite of this one, devoid of selfish motives, is that teacher wants you to get free, and that's the only thing that he or she is concerned with. Like the Ramakrishna order and its teachers, they don't have any desire for you or for the world or for your money or for anything. They want you free. Because if you get so free like that, then you'll give them all your money. No. What they want is the wealth of devotion, the wealth of knowledge. Because if you get free, you can become a freer of other souls without even knowing it. Swamiji, when he was just Narendra, with Sri Ramakrishna still alive, said, I can never teach anyone. I'm not qualified to teach. And Sri Ramakrishna laughed and said, your very bones will teach. Everywhere you go, you'll teach just by your being. See? So that's why I said earlier in class, people who are enlightened sometimes don't even know they're enlightened. And they're afraid to call themselves enlightened. What if Mother all of a sudden decides, you're not enlightened? So he used to say, Divine Mother can make teachers out of mere straw. So he didn't want exaltation, and he didn't want all that. It's really back to this one thing, is that they're devoid of selfish motive. They're just here to help you out of your suffering, out of your bondage, and that's all they want. And people aren't used to that. So they're blindsided by it. They won't believe in you. They won't support religion with their money. They're misers. As Swami Vivekananda, these are quotes I'm using from Vivekananda's experience here with us as a teacher, as the highest qualified teacher. Was not having a good time with us. Americans are straw and fire, and so forth, he said. So then it's up to us to qualify ourselves. So we qualify ourselves and we know what the student needs. But here's what the teacher needs. And Shankara put this in the Vivekachudamani back in 700 AD, and I wish all the Westerners had have read that teaching in the Vivekachudamani before they started into Hatha Yoga, before they started doing pranayama, before they started accepting spurious teachers, so-called teachers, as their gurus. They would have saved themselves a lot of angst, a lot of suffering, a lot of misconception, and maybe even giving up the path. They would have saved themselves that. Because what did we just hear? It should be a matter of days before you get enlightened, right? Ideally, it should be a matter of days. Contact the God of light and get free. Have him say something to you and be free, like that, you see. Ignorance is unreal. You know how Sri Ramakrishna put that. Darkness in a cave. It's been dark for 1,000 years. But as soon as an explorer enters it with a torch, does it take the darkness 1,000 years to go away? It's gone immediately that you put the light in it. So put the light in the cave of your mind, is what he's saying. And be free immediately. And even if you don't quite believe it, try it. Because he also said, you see a bowl of fruit across the room, makes you hungry and thirsty, you go towards it, and you find out it's wax. So that's your saying, I'm enlightened, I'm free. Right now, Babaji told me, you see. But you don't quite feel it, you see. Maybe you feel it when you're in the same room, you see, or when you're having a good day and so forth. But then you go away and say, oh, I'm flagging, you see. But the bowl of wax fruit did show you that you have to go out to the market and get the real thing. So putting on the posture of enlightenment is a good thing. And Shankara, in that very scripture, said, practice samadhi. Those are his very words. You should practice samadhi. Now, of course, he's telling this to many, many generations of enlightened Hindus. Excuse the word, enlightened Aryans or enlightened Indians, but of course everyone uses that word nowadays. So, and so they're going to be more apt to take it seriously and achieve it. But when you come to America that doesn't have these qualifications and doesn't know what a real teacher's like, then that's a problem. What else does a real teacher have as we wrap this up today and going on tomorrow? Shrotriya transmits the essence of the scriptures. Should be able to sit down with a scripture and tell you what it means and unwrap it for you. And as Sri Ramakrishna said, if you're a fish seller, you cut off the tail and the head and you give the body. Right? So the teacher should be able to cut off the head and tail of things that aren't necessary for you to hear, the sand in the scriptures, and just bring out the sweetness of the scriptures in a body, one body of fish. So it should stay to the essence of things. The non-essence is you're a sinner, you see, or something like that. That's the non-essence. Sri Ramakrishna said, a man should never hear that. He should always hear about his divine nature, because then he knows it exists and he'll move towards it, if he is a sinner. By telling him he's a sinner, he's going to go home and get depressed and kill himself. That happened just a couple days ago to someone we know. children, everything, dead. He left them. I'm a sinner, I'm no good. You see, the ego got a hold of him. And that's nothing rare nowadays. So it behooves you to put on this position of nobility. The Upanishad is about to say those who seek are called noble, Arya. They're called noble beings. But those who attain the first stage of yoga, they transcend the transmigratory process. I'll probably get into that tomorrow. And it's a very beautiful teaching because in Vedanta and Buddhism, we think that's what you need to do. And no other religion tells you that. Sorry, not there. It's to live a good life, or a moral life, or go to heaven. And mention of rebirth or transcending transmigration is not there in other religions. You only get it in Mother India. And that's why sometimes she's called pessimistic. Oh, I don't want to hear that, you see. But actually, this is good news. The good news, we know that that is in a dualistic religion, but the good news in Vedanta is Advaita. You're perfect, you're pure. Your nature is stainless. You're the Atman. And you're thinking yourself to be otherwise because of Maya. So the teacher wants to give you that, Shrotriya. That's how you recognize them. Oh, he or she is giving me the essence of the teachings as I sit here in a matter of years. Hopefully in a matter of days, if you understand it right. But like I say, in America, that's probably not happening. It'll take more time to work through our karmas. Abhijna is the third qualification of the authentic spiritual teacher, leads a pure and stainless life. Unostentatious is a nice word in English sometimes they use in Vedantic circles. So, not lavishing in riches and not having abundance of pleasures and foods and all of that kind of thing. Just prefers to keep it pure and simple as possible. It's hard to do in a complex world. But you as householders and people even as vanaprasthans, that is forest dwellers, they also like to try and keep things simple. So somebody told me the other day, well, we're thinking of adopting children. I went, keep it simple. You see, on one side it's a great risk, you don't know what you're getting, right? On the other side it's a great service. This is how Maya works, you see. You have to never know what you're getting, so you proceed cautiously, you see. Because you could adopt a child and 3 years later be tearing her hair out. We know someone who's doing that right now. We know someone last year who left our group because they were having a problem with children. So this happens. And you never know unless you go to the sun god first and ask. Of course, when you see the sun god, you're probably not thinking of children at all. You're thinking of transcending the transmigratory process and being with him, being with Jesus, being with Krishna, being with Ramakrishna, being with Lord Buddha in any of these lands that they preside in. You're actually attaining them. All right, we're out of time, but that's the third qualification, and the fourth is a knower of Brahman. So that will segue into what we're looking at tomorrow, Brahmavid. Brahmavid has access to those four things. Subhecha, Vicharana, Tanumanasa, and Sattvapati have been attained by this being, so he can call himself, or you can call him, Brahmavid, and he's the authentic teacher. If they have these four qualities, you have no qualms about bowing at their feet like I did at Swami Shishananda's. And we'll go through those, what they mean, and go through the rest of these then tomorrow. This has been the first class on the Akshi Upanishad, how to see clearly, and taking the sun god as your chosen deity, and getting, with the sun of wisdom, getting rid of the darkness of ignorance, which is not actual in the first place. So here, let's end with a chant. Om Hiran Maye Parikoshe Virajan Brahmanishkalam Tachu Brahm Jyotisham Jyoti Tadyadatma Viddo Viduhu. Shining like burnished gold, highest and deepest, the core intelligence of living beings, partless and indivisible, ever pure, free of all taint, the essence in everything which all beings seek, either knowingly or unknowingly, there shines Brahman. It is that which the wise ones exult in, and it is that which the gurus teach. Om, peace, peace, peace. May peace be unto us, may peace be unto all. Om Hari Om.